Yeah, yeah. It's your player partner EyeQ, man. I'm back. You feel me? This next reaction was submission. Somebody had put it in the comments, so I figured, hey, I'm gonna do it. Swamp Stories. 4HUNNID versus BOMPTON. Treetops, fruits, and tortillas. Tortillas. Let's get into it. Shout out Swamp Stories too.
Welcome back to another episode of Swamp Stories. For this episode, we head to Compton. Well, actually, for this video, it's going to be called BOMPTON. In my previous LA video, I explained the beginnings of South Central and Watts, but I didn't really get into Compton. Compton's history is pretty well known, and it gained a gritty reputation over the years through NWA, Boys in the Hood, and Straight Outta Compton. So people have an idea of what kinds of things go down in Compton, but they probably don't know exactly how it all works. That is what we're going to get into in this video. But before we get started, make sure to leave a like and subscribe.
Go subscribe to Swamp Stories, y'all.
Let me introduce you to PIRUS. Everyone knows what PIRUS are, but many people don't know where it comes from. It all started around 1970 on East PIRU Street in Compton. This is where the teenagers and street hustlers hung out and made their money. It's also where they joined together and started calling themselves the PIRUS after the street name. They decided to join the BLOOD Alliance, and that's when they grew into a larger operation. It was all PIRUS together, but the unity did not last long. Internal affairs split everything up into different sections. That brings me to the Treetop PIRUS, also known as TTP. They're located south of Rosecrans Avenue between Acacia and Aranby Streets. There are multiple sets of Treetop, but the most famous one is the 400 block of Spruce Street. That is where BOMPTON's biggest rapper is from. When YG talks about 400, well, let me say it correctly. 4HUNNID, this is what it represents. Well, Treetop have not been a well-liked section for about 50 years now. They have problems with almost everyone around them. That includes another set of PIRUs. Let me introduce you to Fruittown PIRU, also known as FTP. You might be thinking this is a goofy name, and yeah, you're not wrong, but it represents the area. Fruittown is located on the other side of Rosecrans Avenue, right above TTP. The streets are named after fruit. Plum Street, Cherry Street, Peach Street are all good examples.
Yeah.
Also located in Fruittown is East PIRU Street, exactly where the PIRUs originated. Different people will say different things, but it's safe to say that they are the original PIRU. There are three typical places where you will find them. Stay away from Gonzalez Park, Cressy Street, and the Douglas Apartments, especially if you're from the Treetop area, because that would most likely be the last street that you ever roll down. Yes, the Treetop versus Fruittown rivalry is that serious, and it has claimed a ridiculous amount of lives over the years. And the craziest part about it is they're not Treetop's only rivals. Treetop is arch rivals with the Varios in Compton, especially a section called T-Flats. T-Flats are located right across the train tracks from Treetop, so when you look at a map, Treetop is boxed in from the north and the east. Their rivals are both right there. T-Flats stands for Tortilla Flats, and yes, I know it sounds silly, but it has nothing to do with Mexican food. But the real reason might be even funnier. They're named after a romantic comedy novel. Nothing is funny about these guys though, and you'll see why in this video. The area they claim doesn't look bad at all compared to Detroit or the South. But don't let the palm trees and nice weather fool you. Compton is nothing like the way it looks. How dangerous is Compton? Well, the answer really depends on the year, which is a common theme in California. Some years the homicide rates will be low, then boom, all of a sudden out of nowhere it explodes. In 2005, Compton had a homicide rate of 67 per 100,000, which led the nation by far. It was 10 times higher than the California average. But things got much better. A decade later in 2015, the rate in Compton dropped to just 13 per 100,000. This is comparable to cities like Las Vegas and Sacramento. For Compton though, this was huge progress. Things had gotten so much better, but that trend didn't last long enough. So far, 2021 has been one of Compton's worst years of all time.
That nigga had a big ass snake paws. Hold on. What the fuck?
Enough. So far,
This nigga just casually pulled out a fucking Python. What the fuck?
2021 has been one of
What the
Compton's
hell?
worst years of all time. They are on pace to reach their 2005 record. BOMPTON is completely out of control. This video will cover a couple of BOMPTON's biggest events, and then we will cover everything involving YG. But before we get into it, let me run the intro.
I thought we was already watching the damn episode. Randall Carboline, knock your head off. That shit sound like beatbox.
One thing that is off limits is strolling through rival territory, no matter what the reason. And in Compton, making that mistake can cost your life. April 16th, 2009. 3 teenagers from Treetops decide to go visit a girl named Keisha after school. Well, the problem is that she lives in T-Flats territory, but the boys take their chances to go anyways. They make it to Keisha's house safely, so they think that everything is okay. Well, it's time to leave, and they decide to head down Elm Street to cross the tracks back into Treetop territory. This is when a Honda creeps slowly behind them. One of the teens notices the car and gets suspicious. The driver of the car is a 24-year-old named Hammer. Hammer gets behind them and yells flats and makes a F with his hands. One of the teens turns to his 2 friends and says, "Run. Just run as fast as you can and do not look back." They take off running, and the Honda screeches and speeds up. That's when one of the teens, Tyler Jenkins, turns around and BAM! He nails the driver and the car crashes into a tree.
Damn.
The teens would be found not long after this, and this is when things would turn left. One of the teens that took off running decided to—
Hold on. So the dude in the car that said flats, he got killed? The nigga who was doing the pressing? Hold on.
tell the police. This is when things would turn left. One of the teens that took off—
Hold on.
car crashes into a tree, turns around and just screeches and speeds up. That's when one of the teens, Tyler Jenkins, turns around and BAM! He nails the driver and the car crashes into a tree. The teens would be found not long after this, and this is when things would turn left. One of the teens that took off running decided to tell the police everything that happened. He told them where to retrieve the piece that Tyler Jenkins used.
Wow.
He was under 18 at the time, so he's known as LH instead of his full name. This is when things would get interesting, because
Wow.
the men in the Honda would testify as well.
What?
They would tell investigators that they were not following the teens around and that they did not whip out on them. LH's story did not match theirs, so police got suspicious. Investigators would look—
How the fuck you press somebody, you get shot, or your man got killed or whoever, and then you fucking snitch? That's why they build sidewalks, man. A lot of y'all need to get out the street. It's okay, you don't have to be in the street, but that's why they got sidewalks. Just stay on the curb, man.
Look for
Goofball.
clues linking the men in the Honda to T-Flats. They found graffiti saying Hammer and NK, which I won't say the word, but it starts with N and ends with ER. Then a neighbor would testify that one of the men in the Honda would yell, "Can't be in this neighborhood." Despite the evidence of hate and affiliations, it would not be enough to help Tyler Jenkins. He would end up getting 31 years. His friend LH is the only reason he went down. Without his testimony and pointing to evidence, chances are Tyler Jenkins would have never gotten arrested. After this incident, Treetop and T-Flats would become even bigger rivals. The tensions grew further and it became on site for both sides. December 8th, 2011. T-Flats member Dopey and his friend Jason Ayala are standing in front of the apartments on Elm Street. That's when 2 Treetops walk up to them and ask, "Are you Dopey from TF?" And before he could even answer, a man named Marcus White whips out on him and BAM! Dopey gets hit and they both take off. The Treetops chase them, but eventually they give up. That's when Jason Ayala would go back to the scene to wait for police. When they arrived, he would tell them exactly what happened and who did it. He would tell them to look for a tall black man in a white shirt running towards the strip mall. That's when police would go chase him down and he would climb onto a roof and try to hide, but then they would eventually find him. Well, when they found him, he would tell them everything that happened as well. Except that his story was different. Marcus White would tell them that T-Flat's men stopped them while they were simply walking down the street. He would also tell them that it was his friend Dimitri Gales who did it. So then police would go grab up Dimitri and bring him into the station. Well, guess what? Do you think Dimitri would cooperate as well? Yes, of course he would, but his story was different as well. At the time, Dimitri Gales did not know that his friend had told on him, so Dimitri would tell them that he never saw White let off at all. I know you might be thinking, how is this snitching? Because he didn't incriminate his friend. But the rules are the rules, and you are not supposed to make any statements under any circumstances.
Right.
Well, all that barking didn't do Marcus White any justice because he would get 20 years.
Damn.
And his friend Dimitri Gales that he told on would
Dumbass.
get 18 years as well.
Dumbass.
Both of them would hit the yard with paperwork. Dimitri Gales is currently serving at Los Angeles County Prison, and Marcus White is currently serving.
Is this even legal to put these people's
Ironwood
names out about this type of shit?
If you haven't picked up on it yet, Compton is very territorial. You always have to know where you are because you can make one wrong turn and be done for. Treetop PIRUs know this reality very well, especially YG. He grew up his whole life in this environment and he claims that he gave up his life for Treetop. He is no stranger to opposition and handling himself in sketchy situations. That brings me to June 6, 2015. YG is at the studio recording songs with all of his friends around. He steps outside the studio and notices a suspicious black car pulls into the gate. Some unfamiliar guys come out of the car and YG confronts them. They claim that they live there, but YG can tell that something is not right. He heads back into the studio, and that's when his friend steps outside. The men whip out on his friend and arguments start. YG runs outside to see what's going on, and bam! That's when the men let off. He gets hit in the hip 3 times. His friend carries him to his car and drives him to the hospital. The driver loses control of the car and rams into the median and hits a parked car. YG is going unconscious in the backseat of a car that just wrecked. Thankfully, an ambulance comes and YG somehow gets released the same day. He got extremely lucky to make it, especially where he was hit. If they were hollows, it would have been a different result. The next day, YG would hit the studio and he would dedicate himself to the grind for the next year, dropping hit after hit and dropping his second studio album, Still Crazy. But in Compton, it's hard to avoid problems, especially when you're famous like YG and affiliated with Treetops. May 16th, 2016, Compton rapper AD, who was the guy on the No Jumper podcast who says there's no shame in paying for that has nothing to do with this. I just had to say that. Shout out to AD.
Yo, what the fuck? I'm about to say, why did he say that, bro, about AD? Dude, shout out Swamp Stores, you funny as a motherfucker. Shout out AD too, man.
But he's a rapper who has some hard songs. One of those is with YG, and they had a big video shoot in Compton. It goes well until things turn left. A car pulls up and bam, they start spraying up the video shoot. But luckily everyone was okay. This event didn't seem to shock AD though. He went on DJ Vlad to talk about it.
What happened at the video shoot with you and YG?
Yeah, the video shoot, man, it was just, it's just a regular day in Compton. It was an average day in Compton, man. It's an average day in Compton. And, I just say it was God. God was with everybody that day because it could have been ugly. Because there ain't no way that you could tell me that nobody got hit.
Now let's talk about their Fruittown rivals. Fruittown became popular in the headlines starting around 2013 when Chris Brown started claiming Fruittown PIRU. Well then, in 2017, Soulja Boy would claim that he's from BOMPTON and Fruittown is his hood. He would even walk around Fruittown. Yeah, watch this.
And Big Soulja ain't gonna catch no fame cause I'm worth too many M's, you dig? Hey, what's going on, man? They say Soulja ain't from the hood. They say Soulja ain't from the hood. Oh, yeah, that's like
Fruittown PIRU. Real ones too. We the real ones. Who ain't from Fruits? Who ain't from Fruittown? I'm walking through BOMPTON right now. I'm in my hood right now.
This nigga Soulja. Yo, what's to this nigga fucking Soulja Boy, bro? Soulja, you funny as shit, man. This nigga Soulja done been like 20 different people his whole career. This nigga's crazy, this nigga. For BOMPTON.
Holla Sue, the blood starts swarming.
This was not a good look for LA because it makes their streets look watered down and really just a joke. Some Fruittown members would feel the same way.
All that entertainment shit, that shit out, bro. We do our own rap shit. If we doing our own shit right now.
But a lot of people want to know how could Soulja Boy just pull up over here and walk around like that?
He can't.
The blood ain't finna just come over here by itself or none of that. Without the blood, ain't none of that on PIRUS, not none of that.
YG would not like this either, and I think he's right for feeling that way. He actually grew up in this situation. He had to grow up dealing with all the rough streets that surrounded him. And to have celebrities claiming hoods that they're not from and saying they're members is disrespectful to everyone who grew up in the predicament. The game would retweet YG's statement. Let's fast forward a couple years to June 28th, 2019. Treetop rapper Slim 400 is coming back from a show in a tinted car. He pulls up to his family's house, but that's where men are waiting for him. As soon as he steps out of the car, bam! He's hit 9 times, and his friends bring him into the house to try to hold his attention and make sure he stays awake. Somehow he ends up surviving. This event would have Treetop moving dangerous. Just 5 days later, things would get even crazier. YG's black armored Escalade would be driven by his friend James Harris on the night of July 3rd. YG would claim to be in Hollywood at the recording studio while his friend had his car. Well, James Harris would have quite the night in YG's car. He is driving down the 400 block of Spruce Street, right where YG grew up. That's when a police car gets behind him to pull him over. But before the cop can even get out of his car, James Harris hops out and bam! He absolutely fans out the police car, and in the process, he hits a 65-year-old neighbor. Ricky Starks was visiting his brother in Compton, and he happened to be riding his bike to the corner store when this happened.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's a sad story of wrong place, wrong time. But James Harris wouldn't be done causing chaos. He would go full GTA mode. He has 5 stars, and he decides to take off. LAPD sends a helicopter to follow him all the way to Inglewood. That's when Harris hops out and starts busting at the helicopter. The pilot claims that Harris hit the rotator, which is insane. So the helicopter backs away, and eventually hundreds of police cars swarm him and apprehend him after he surrenders. When police would run the registration of the Escalade, they would find that it belongs to YG. So they would get a warrant to raid his Hollywood home. They would find nothing that ties YG to the crazy incident. Let's fast forward to 2020. YG and Mozzie began working together on a joint album. They drop a hit song called BOMPTON to Oak Park and record it in Mozzie's neighborhood. YG has high praise for Mozzie and sees him as this generation's Tupac. CML would laugh at this statement by YG.
That's rapping friends. Oh man, that nigga like the next Tupac. That nigga's the next. And I slap the both y'all.
I ain't never.
For even disrespecting Tupac like that.
What do you guys think? Is YG right about Mozzie being this generation's Tupac? And is CML...
Okay. That was a funny ass ending, bro. Man, y'all let me know what you think about that. Like, subscribe, notification bell. Tell for records we on the road to 100 good.